What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
As an employee, and I don't care where you work, one of the biggest frustrations is having leadership not show up for you. In particular, though, when you are a first responder, and this is one of the biggest complaints that I get.
And I've dealt with it throughout my career. You'll have, say, chiefs, assistant chiefs on down the chain of command. If your leadership isn't present, like, it leads to a morale issue because, and on the contrary too, is if they're there and micromanaging too much, there has to be a good balance between the two.
Yeah, and it's such a frustrating reality when you're held to this high standard by leadership that doesn't always lead by example.
Yeah, if they're non-present, they're not there to support you and to build the agency, and they're only looking out for themselves, then it has a ripple down effect to where there's no loyalty. And I think you're seeing that across the board with a lot of different, especially police agencies.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of times what happens is there's these private discussions that happen amongst admin and even like people in the buddy system. And when those closed door discussions happen, a lot of the times you can get passed over from things like promotion, or a lot of those disciplinary discussions take place before they're ever presented to you. And I recently had a discussion with somebody who was experiencing something similar to this, just knowing that there's a lot of that kind of whispers happening. And my recommendation was to make sure that you're documenting everything, like literally get a notebook or put it in your phone and timestamp it with the date and who, what, and when kind of situation. It could be very beneficial later on, especially if litigation might need to take place.
Yeah, and it's important, especially when in law enforcement, we tell people, when it comes to child custody issues, document dates and times, document anything and everything. It doesn't take a long time to document that. I mean, open your notes on your phone and just start keeping a rolling dialogue of what's occurring, and there could be some nefarious activity or there could not be, and it's being able to have everything documented down to where you can factually say this happened on this day.
Another thing that I see is this sort of favoritism over merit. Going back to that buddy system, a lot of the times, whoever's in that inner circle is going to be the ones that get promoted. And it's not always based on your performance or your dedication. And so in situations like that, I think it's so important to focus on your integrity and stay consistent. I know, Clint, you and I have had discussions about this numerous times, but I think that your professionalism ultimately is going to speak louder than any kind of bias.
Yeah, and I can think back through past chiefs and the difference compared from those past chiefs to now, and because it's that ripple down effect, their right-hand people are going to follow the chief's agenda on what they want. To know, you have those people who are getting promoted or getting selected for details. You're like, why the heck did that person get selected when they haven't done anything in their entire careers? Where now we have that impact of, well, they really look at everything associated to the employees, evals and everything like that to get that promotion or selected for a detail.
Yeah. Another thing here is ignoring officer wellness or morale. And again, this can apply to anybody, because I remember when I worked under somebody else and there was no limit. I didn't have a clock in, clock out. And I was available 24/7, and it really didn't matter what was compounded and added to my plate, especially the things that weren't even my job responsibility. She just didn't care at all.
No, and that's a toxic leader leader for lack of a better term, and not having someone there to not only respect your boundaries, but to respect the employee-employer relationship. It's super happy to have, or super important to have that dynamic, because you inherently create that for yourself, but you need to be able to create those boundaries, but be open to the exploration of changing them as well.
Yeah, you really need to be your own advocate. And a lot of the times that means saying no. And I think we struggle with that because we don't want to get passed over. We don't want to be the person that is saying no all the time. But sometimes we need to realize that it's okay to.
Yeah, and it's creating that relationship dynamic, whether it's between you as an employee and your employer, whether it's a sergeant, a lieutenant, whoever it is, being able to create that dynamic to say no and not have to explain why.
Another big misfortune that happens is that there's this disregard for field realities, especially in law enforcement. So I see a lot of the times where as you rise above the ranks, that desk kind of becomes more familiar. And when that happens, then any kind of policy changes don't really reflect what's actually happening out there on the street.
Yeah, when you're not out in the street and seeing what's feasible or not, you have to speak with your frontline people to really have an understanding of what goes on. I mean, you're not going to be able to change what new laws or anything like that come into place, but when it comes to localized, if you do this, then this is going to happen, you need to really analyze the effect that it's going to have on your troops.
Yeah, and you can schedule meetings, you can submit ideas formally. During briefing, you can have an open discussion. That's probably one of the best when you do work in law enforcement. But the biggest thing to me is to make sure that you're not just complaining, right? Have a this then, so this is happening and then this is the result, and have an actual discussion around it so that it's something that can be constructive.
Yeah, I tell my guys this all the time, like if they have a problem and my guys do know, like, if there's a problem for something, don't just come to me with the problem. Like, I want you to come to me with the problem and your ways of being able to approach that problem to change it or fix it.
So there's a lot of ways that we can navigate poor leadership, and there's some that a lot of people don't realize makes such a big impact. And I think the first one is making sure that you lead yourself first.
If you don't micromanage your own actions and what you do, it's going to create that ripple effect between yourself and others because you're just flying by the seat of your pants. And I think leading yourself first is the best example of being able to, really change your guys' perspective and having to deal with any given situation, because you can control your reactions to things and you're making educated decisions. Yeah.
So your attitude and any effort that you put in, your ethics, it's always within your control, and the standard really does start with you. Clint, I'm going to be talking to you as I say this, but the next one that I put here is to find micro leaders that are at your level. So not all leadership comes from the top. There are sergeants, corporals, senior patrol officers, all of these people that lead with integrity. And sometimes we forget the importance of not only connecting with them, but if you're in one of those positions, to let others connect with you in that way.
Yeah, it's being able to be open and have a shared experience with one another. And I can think throughout my career is I've had some really great leaders and I've had some really bad leaders, and you take that information from both of them to adjust your own leader style, and you have to be open to receiving it, not just saying it's this or that.
Yeah, and I mentioned taking notes, but I think it's so important to make sure that if you have any kind of communication with somebody, any kind of changes or just situations where you feel unsupported, to just document it, because what you're doing is you're not only protecting yourself, but you're also building this paper trail for the possibility of accountability later on, because chances are, if you're having a problem with that particular individual, a lot of other people probably are too.
Yeah, and it gives you teeth and it gives you something to stand on, because when you don't have something documented, all the facts and everything like that, it kind of falls upon deaf ears. But if you can say on this day and this time, this is what happened, and you're showing kind of a history associated to those steps, then it's hard to dispute that.
And I think too that when leadership doesn't have your back, it's very easy for us to become jaded. We become disconnected, and we become even more burnt out too. Gosh, I remember that. Like the main reason not wanting to go into that office was because of her, not because of anything else. It was just because of that one individual. And so that's really telling. That's information. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.